As the legend of Jesus grew around the Roman Empire, questions about what kind of child he must have been led to the creation of new stories about his youth. Perhaps none of them are more remarkable than the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. This is Bible Search and Rescue. Welcome back to Bible Search and Rescue. Bible Search and Rescue is part of the Westar Institute. My name is Chad Venters. I am a Westar scholar and the director of Bible Search and Rescue. I'm here in my office recording the final entry in our Infancy Gospel series. We are looking at the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. I absolutely love the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, mostly because it is the closest thing we have to a superhero origin story featuring Jesus. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is a 2nd century CE document that gives us a remarkable insight into how people thought about Jesus as the legends about him grew throughout the Roman Empire. And what's really fun about this one is that you get to see a very different side of Jesus. And we're going to look at several excerpts from the Infancy Gospel of Thomas in order to just kind of see, like, wow, right, these are ways in which people thought that his existence might have played out, or probably not. And in most of the cases, I think folks felt that they were just legends and they were meant to tell a story, a parable, if you will, about the nature of the boy. And I think you're going to find this one fascinating. If you don't know Bible Search and Rescue videos, we don't do exhaustive looks into topics. The idea is that we want to do something introductory for people who may have an interest in what's going on with specific subjects, or in this case, for those who have only ever known anything about the infancy of Jesus from the Gospels in the New Testament. It's a chance to spread those horizons. And during the course of this series, we did look at the infancy Gospels found in Matthew and Luke in what we called the Christmas stories, looking at those very diverse narratives. And then in our last video, we looked at the Infancy Gospel of James, which gave us some background into Mary and what she was like as a youth. And now we get the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. So if you were ever the person wondering, what was Kid Jesus like? You are in for a treat, because you're going to get one heck of a story about young Jesus and what it was like growing up with young Jesus in the small village of Nazareth. The story picks up with Jesus as a 5-year-old, and as we jump in here and we look at excerpts, all of these texts come from Westar's own The Complete Gospels, which was edited by Robert Miller. The Complete Gospels is a fantastic resource for anybody who wants to study the gospel text, not just in the New Testament, but beyond. Highly encourage you to get a copy of that. Let's dive in and take a look at exactly what's going on with Jesus as a 5-year-old, because I think you'll find he was not your typical 5-year-old, according to the Infancy Gospel. When this boy Jesus was 5 years old, he was playing at the ford of a rushing stream. He was collecting the flowing water into ponds, and with a single command, he made the water instantly pure. He then made soft clay and shaped it into 12 sparrows. He did this on the Sabbath, and a lot of other boys were playing with him. But when a Jew saw what Jesus was doing while playing on the Sabbath, he immediately went off and told Joseph, Jesus' father, "See here, your boy is at the ford, and he has violated the Sabbath by taking mud and making 12 birds with it." So Joseph went there, and as soon as he spotted him, he shouted, "Why are you doing what's not permitted on the Sabbath?" But Jesus simply clapped his hands and shouted to the sparrows, "Go on, fly away, and remember me, you who are now alive." And the sparrows took off and flew away noisily. The Jews watched with amazement, then left the scene to report to their leaders what they had seen Jesus doing. We talk a lot today about kids having a more active lifestyle, and boy was Jesus active, not just personally, but actually apparently so active that he was creating life. So 5-year-old Jesus is making sparrows out of clay and causing them to come alive and to fly away, which by the way is super amazing. If you have a kid who can do this, get them on America's Got Talent today because you will win, I assure you. Now, what's fascinating about how the story develops is that people don't really know what to do with Jesus at the beginning of this, because he's doing things on the Sabbath that the Jewish people are saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. But at the same time, he's also bringing clay sparrows to life. And so anytime you have somebody who can make life out of mud, you have to start asking questions about, is this normal? I don't think so. I don't remember doing this whenever I was a kid. What they're discovering here early in the text is that Jesus is anything but ordinary. And sometimes being anything but ordinary can come at a cost for those who have doubts about how extraordinary he truly is. The son of Annas the scholar was standing there with Jesus. He took a willow branch and drained the water Jesus had collected. Jesus saw what had happened and got angry and said to him, "Damn you, you ungodly ignoramus! What harm were the ponds of water doing you? From now on, you too will dry up like a tree, and you will never produce leaves or roots or bear fruit." In an instant, the boy had completely withered away. Then Jesus departed and left for the house of Joseph. The parents of the boy who had withered away picked him up and were carrying him out in grief because he was so young. And they came to Joseph and accused him. "It's your fault. Your boy did all this." So that escalated quickly. Jesus goes from bringing the clay sparrows alive to withering away a person in his own village, a fellow kid. And this is the kind of thing that does not sit well in the past or in the present. Right? So if your kid causes a neighbor's kid to just wither away and die, people don't take kindly to that. It was the same back then as it is now. It's never good. Jesus is now whacking kids in the neighborhood because of things like they drained his water out of the little ponds he had made. So huge no-no. Big faux pas, just like it would be today. But as we're going to see, Jesus goes through a little bit of a growth process in the text. In fact, the son of Annas was not the only child that Jesus decided to take care of in a very mobster type way during the course of the book. There's other instances in which people are going, maybe we shouldn't question the kid because things don't go particularly well whenever we do that. Now, what's interesting is that it isn't just that Jesus has power. It's also that he has wisdom beyond his years. And in fact, as a 5-year-old, what they tried to do is they tried to have a man by the name of Zacchaeus do some education for Jesus because they thought, you know what, he's out there, he's using powers, kids are dying. Maybe if we give him some education, that will stop it. It's like you're trying to stop a serial killer by teaching them the ABCs. And what's fascinating is that as you look at the story, Jesus is not just powerful in the sense that he has all of this ability, he's also brilliant. As we see here, he stumps the learned men of his village. The Jews who were standing by and heard Jesus marveled and said, "How strange and paradoxical. This child is barely 5 years old, and yet he says such things. In fact, we've never heard anyone say the kinds of things this child does." Jesus said to them in reply, "Are you really so amazed? Think about what I've said to you. The truth is that I also know when you were born, and your parents, and I announce this paradox to you. When the world was created, I existed along with the one who sent me to you." So now they're starting to come to terms with the fact that Jesus is claiming as a 5-year-old that he existed before them and pretty much before anything. And lest we think that Jesus is nothing but a monster in the text, We get some clarification from that during the course of this conversation. While the Jews were advising Zacchaeus, the child laughed loudly and said, "Now let the infertile bear fruit, and the blind see and the deaf hear in the understanding of their heart. I've come from above to rescue those below and call them to higher things, just as the one who sent me to you commanded me." When the child stopped speaking, all those who had fallen under the curse were instantly saved. And from then on, no one dared to anger him for fear of being cursed and maimed for life. So there's two things from this, is that first of all of the people that had in some way, shape, or form been killed by 5-year-old Jesus are now restored back from their curse, which is great, right? It's a good, happy ending for everyone. They were dead, they're back, and 5-year-old Jesus doesn't develop a reputation as being someone who is just killing everybody in the village. Always a good thing. Of course, there is that little bit of fear, is like, maybe we shouldn't tick off this child because he has the ability to do terrible, terrible things to us. It's like an episode of The Twilight Zone. Now, something begins to shift in the text at this point. It's when the people acknowledge and start to understand who the child is that the story shifts a little bit. And we start to see that Jesus takes on a different relationship with the people around him. A few days later, Jesus was playing on the roof of a house when one of the children playing with him fell off the roof and died. When the other children saw what had happened, they ran away and left Jesus all by himself. The parents of the dead child came and accused Jesus. "You troublemaker, you're the one who threw him down." Jesus responded, "I didn't throw him down, he threw himself down. He just wasn't being careful. He jumped down from the roof and died." Then Jesus himself jumped down from the roof and stood over the body of the child and shouted in a loud voice, "Zeno," that was his name, "get up and tell me, did I push you down?" He got up immediately and said, "No, Lord, you didn't push me down, you raised me up." Those who saw this were astonished. The child's parents worshiped Jesus and praised God for the miracle that had happened. Nobody likes being accused of something you didn't do. And one gets the impression Jesus didn't like the accusation either. Of course, when you kill a few kids in your village, sometimes people will have a little bit of an accusation problem whenever they see you alone with somebody on a roof and that person falls off and dies. Call it human nature. But as we see here, child Jesus, in a really hilarious scene, jumps down and starts yelling the kid's name, "Zeno, was it me?" And of course, Zeno pops up. And something is starting to change here. Jesus's powers aren't being used as spontaneously towards things like, "Hey, you bumped into me, I'm going to kill you." It takes on a different approach. He starts to change. He starts to help people while using his abilities to make the world something much better. Now, Jesus' father was a carpenter, making plows and yokes at that time. He took an order from a rich man to make a bed for him. When one board of what is called the crossbeam turned out shorter than the other, and Joseph didn't know what to do, the child Jesus said to his father Joseph, "Put the two boards down and line them up at one end." Joseph did as the child told him. Jesus stood at the other end, grabbed hold of the shorter board, and, by stretching it, made it the same length as the other. His father Joseph looked on and marveled, and he hugged and kissed the child, saying, "How lucky I am that God has given me this child." This is kind of a touching story because if you go over to my dad's house, he has got 2x4s and pieces of wood going back roughly 70 years because he has never thrown a piece of wood away in his life. You never know when you might need it. But a lot of folks in this time period did not have a shed just full of old wood that could be used in case something was needed. The fact that he had missed on the crossbeam was a serious thing. And yet the child Jesus was able to take the beam and he was able to stretch it out just far enough for his dad to be able to use it, and saving him all sorts of embarrassment and money and so forth. Wonderful story, and it shows that Jesus is developing and maturing in a pretty remarkable way. And there are several such stories like this in the second half of the book. Another that might be considered a touching story reads like this. A year later, while a building was under construction, a man fell from the top of it and died. There was quite a commotion, so Jesus got up and walked over. When he saw the man lying dead, he took his hand and said, "I say to you, sir, get up and go back to work." And he immediately got up and worshipped him. The crowd saw this and marveled. This child's from heaven, he must be, because he has saved many souls from death, and he can go on saving all his life. Unfortunately for the man, even though he died, he still had to go back to work. But more fortunately, probably, is the fact that a family had their husband and father back. And that's really what the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is about. It's about people coming to terms with how special the child Jesus is, and how Jesus himself grows and matures during the course of his youth, leading up to the time when he is age 12 and he is heading into the temple. It's a really lovely narrative, very clearly not something that we would look at as being a historical narrative, any more than we would look at virgin births or stars in the sky as being something that would inherently fall in with the realm of a historical narrative. But that's not really what it's about. The idea of these infancy gospels is that these stories about a young Jesus compare him with the great people of the past, emperors, philosophers, Olympic heroes. They had remarkable stories told about them in their youth. And perhaps what makes all of this so intriguing is that in a time before Jesus had been adopted by Rome, before he had become, true God of true God through all of the creed and all of these other ideas, here was this peasant man executed by Rome who had not only this following of people that came along to continue his memory, but even compared him in many regards, such as in these infancy narratives, to great emperors and other remarkable figures of the past, both historical and mythological. That's one of the amazing things about the infancy stories and about the way that the Jesus legend grew. From this historical life grew all of this remarkable information about Jesus. Some of it can be deemed to be historical, some of it very fantastical and obviously fictional, but all in all, a remarkable journey of trying to look at Jesus and how the world, especially in those first 2 centuries, started to see him. Even if it was a small part of the world, which it was, the fascination grew. And it's a fascinating story for all of us to study at this point in history. In our next episode of Bible Search and Rescue, we're going to take a biographical look at the life of Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, who had Jesus executed. It's going to be a fascinating analysis of the man and trying to help understand where the gospel accounts of Pilate may have some accuracy versus where maybe there was some fiction involved in how they presented the story. I hope you found the infancy narratives of Jesus fascinating, and until next time, go out and make the world a better place for someone else. Take care, everyone.